I never thought that the man I married, the man I trusted, the man I felt safe with, the man I loved with that naive and unconditional devotion that you only trust once in your life, would turn away from me so easily, almost indifferently, as if all the years we lived together, all the support I gave him, everything I brought to this family, had suddenly depreciated in one day, like crumpled paper that no one needed anymore. I am 34 years old. I work in the tech industry in Milan, where every day begins with a cup of strong espresso and the squeak of messages in a corporate chat, where success is measured not only by the zeros in a contract, but also by the ability not to burn alive in the endless rhythm of presentations, deadlines, and meetings. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy. I've spent the last decade climbing a cliff, each new level requiring sacrifice, sleepless nights spent sifting through lines of code and writing reports until dawn, missed holidays when my parents blew out their cake candles without me, the endless hustle and bustle of being noticed in the noisy, unforgiving world of corporate warfare. All of this has become an integral part of my journey. I wasn't looking for the easy way out. I wanted more, and I knew that to get what I wanted, I would have to give it all. And then, when it seemed like my efforts were finally starting to bear fruit, when I was about to taste the recognition I deserved, everything went down the drain. Last month, my boss, a blunt but fair man, called me into a meeting. He wasn't smiling when he said it, but there was a rare softness in his voice. The offer I heard seemed unreal, a promotion to a key position, influence, authority, and most importantly, a salary that would triple my current income overnight, turning my dreams of owning a house, traveling, and investing into reality. It was more than I had ever thought I would earn in my entire life, and I couldn't contain my joy, thanked him, and hurried home to share the news with the person who had always been there. Gaston, my husband of 36 years at the time, greeted me as usual, with a tired smile and a glass of wine in his hand. I told him everything, my words stumbling with excitement, my eyes shining like a child who had received the gift he had dreamed of all his life. I expected him to be happy for me, proud, maybe even inspired, and at first it seemed that way. He nodded, said something encouraging, hugged me, kissed my forehead, and at that moment I believed that everything would be fine. But over the next few days, something changed. He became distant, as if every time I started talking about work or an upcoming contract, an invisible wall grew between us. I thought that maybe it was because he was insecure. He earned significantly less and never aspired to big things. He was satisfied with stability, a small electronics store, rare clients, and free time. This has always suited me. I believe in partnership, in equality, where money does not determine a person's weight in a relationship, but respect, support, kindness. And then he said, "My mother wants us to come to her place for dinner." His voice was even, calm, but something pricked me. I should have guessed that something was wrong. That evening, when we went to his parents' house, an ordinary house on the outskirts, with peeling stairs and the smell of old furniture, I expected an ordinary, modest dinner. Instead, I found myself in the middle of something like a family council meeting. His entire family, his mother Wanda, his father Leopoldo, his sister Chiara, her husband, 2 cousins, and an uncle, all sat in the living room, lined up as if before a court ceremony. Gaston sat silently next to his mother, avoiding my gaze. Wanda spoke first. Her voice was oily, ingratiating, like that of someone who smiles when she's about to say something unpleasant. "Darling, we've all wanted to talk to you about your new job," she said, and I nodded, expecting some kind of congratulations. "Of course we think it's wonderful," she continued, with that studied politeness that immediately gave away the catch. "But we also think you should reconsider." I blinked, not understanding. "Reconsider?" Leopoldo, her husband, intervened, a man with eyes that held more reproach than warmth. "It's just that this job means a lot of money, and it wouldn't be fair to keep it all to yourself, would it?" His words sounded like an accusation. Chiara, always sarcastic, smirked. "This money should provide for the whole family. You don't need all this, do you?" I looked at Gaston, seeking protection, support, at least a look that would tell me, "They're overdoing it, I'm with you." But he just nodded. "Yes, baby. It's fair. Fair enough." I felt a hollowness inside. "What do you want from me?" My voice was almost a whisper. Give you my salary? Kiera rolled her eyes, as if I were an idiot who couldn't understand the most basic things. Not everything. Just enough to help. Help with what? My voice was sharper now, more pointed. Wanda folded her arms, as if she were about to offer something touching. Well, since you make so much, you could help us pay off the mortgage. Kiera and her husband need help with their loans. Leopoldo and I are looking at vacation homes. The market is crazy right now. My stomach clenched. Oh, and Leopoldo needs a new truck, she added, as if it were a small thing. Leopoldo nodded. My old one is about to fall apart. I turned to Gaston. He still wasn't looking at me. I took a deep breath. Let me get this straight. You all want me to take my new salary and fund your lives? Kiera shrugged. Yeah. Gaston finally spoke. Come on, baby. You know we'd do the same for you. I laughed, loudly, bitterly. Would you? Would you really do that? Because I've never seen any of you lift a finger for me. Wanda gasped, as if I'd insulted her. That's not true, she protested. We're family, and family helps each other, Leopoldo added. I stood up. You know what? You're right. The words came with unexpected calm, and I saw everyone's expressions change, from Kiera's haughty eyebrow to Wanda's slightly trembling fingers, as if someone had finally said exactly what they'd been waiting for. There was a flicker of surprise in their eyes, followed by something vaguely resembling triumph, an almost childish anticipation of an easy victory, as if I had truly given in. I smiled. Let's even things out, I said, slowly looking around at this group that had suddenly decided that my life belonged to them. Gaston and I had a joint savings account. Back when we opened it, it seemed like a symbol of trust, unity, a common goal, something that was natural in a marriage based on love. But now, looking back, I realize what a big, almost fatal mistake it was. Over the years, I put much more into that account than he did, covering bills, paying for holidays, making transfers when he suddenly forgot to contribute his share, but I never cared, because I naively believed, we are together. We are a team. That evening, as soon as we got home and the silence in the house was thick and heavy, like a viscous fog, and Gaston had gone into the shower without a word, I sat down on the couch, picked up my laptop, and without hesitation did what I should have done a long time ago. I transferred all my years of hard work and sacrifice, more than $45,000, into my personal account, long opened but previously barely used. Then I made a few calls. I officially recalled his car, which was registered in my name, and the bank received a notice of confiscation. The credit card he had used without restriction, assuming I would continue to cover the expenses in silence, was immediately frozen. I remembered how, when I took out the mortgage, I had insisted on a special legal clause protecting my name. At the time it seemed paranoid, now it turned out to be a salvation. By morning, Gaston's entire financial world had collapsed. The first call came from Wanda, her voice raspy and irritated, but I ignored it, as did the dozens of calls that followed from Kiera, and then Gaston himself, shouting from the bathroom, "What the hell? Where's all my money?" I didn't answer, just sipped my coffee calmly, letting the moment finally settle inside me. When I opened my phone, it was littered with notifications, dozens of messages, just as I'd expected. From Wanda, "How could you do this to your family?" From Kiera, "Selfish bitch. You've humiliated us." From Gaston, "Baby, please. We need to talk." I left them to stew in their own rage, because if I'd started answering, I wouldn't have stopped. Gaston came home from work, white as a sheet. His face, usually tanned and carefree, was drawn, his lips pursed, his eyes red. He stopped in the doorway, breathing heavily. "You ruined me," he whispered, with such genuine pain, as if he didn't realize he'd put the rope around his neck. "No," I said calmly, without raising my voice. "I was just leveling the playing field." He stared at me, panic and hurt and something else I couldn't quite decipher frozen in his eyes. I didn't know what would happen next, couldn't predict how low he'd stoop, but I knew this. They thought they could use me, thought I'd give away my success like it meant nothing, like it was a gift they could just take away. They've forgotten that I deserved it. And I owed them nothing. I knew they would be furious. I knew Gaston would panic. But I didn't expect how far they would go to get back at me for not playing by their rules anymore. After I cut off all our sources of shared income, after his cards stopped working and his accounts were suddenly empty, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. Because Gaston wasn't just angry, he was desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. For the first few days, he tried to apologize. He wrote, "Please, let's talk. I never meant to hurt you." His voicemails were choppy, his voice shaking, insisting that he was under pressure from his family, and he was only doing this because he thought it was the right thing to do. I said nothing. I needed space, needed to purge myself of all the lies, all the deception, all the coldness he had brought into my home. On the third day, he showed up at my office. He looked terrible, to say the least, unshaven, with puffy eyelids, in a wrinkled shirt, hunched over, as if each day since I had left had become a burden to him. "Can we just talk?" he begged. "Just 5 minutes." I stepped outside, crossing my arms over my chest, and without waiting for permission, he spoke. "I made a mistake. I know that now. I should have protected you. I should have told them no. But it's over now, right? We can fix it." I shook my head. "No, Gaston. You can fix it. I'm done." His face twisted, and the desperate, pathetic husband I had just seen disappeared. He straightened up, clenching his teeth. His voice was quiet, almost icy. "You're making a mistake." I raised an eyebrow. "You think you can just walk away and leave me with nothing?" I looked into his eyes. "I didn't leave you with nothing. I left you with exactly what you deserved." His hands clenched into fists. "You'll regret this." I turned to go back into the building. I doubt it. A week passed. I thought maybe he'd given up, that he, like any grown man with any sense or dignity left, would have the sense to let it go, to step back, to shut up, to digest the reality that I was no longer his cash cow, his silent companion accepting any humiliation. I should have known better, because people who are used to getting everything without trying do very poorly when the source of their easy life is lost. They don't forgive others for their freedom, especially women who refuse to be part of their script. One morning, my boss called me into his office. His voice was too soft, his face too focused for this to be a routine meeting. I walked in, clutching a cup of coffee, and I immediately sensed that something was wrong. He closed the door and said, "Hey," with a hint of gentle concern. "I got an anonymous email about you. Thought you should see it." He turned the computer screen toward me, and the moment I saw what was on the screen, a chill ran through me, like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water inside me. There was an email on the screen, the subject line starting innocently, but each subsequent line evolving into a carefully crafted, venomous attack. The email claimed that I was stealing company money, that I was emotionally unstable, that I had lied on my resume to get my current position. These weren't just empty accusations. Every sentence was designed to undermine my reputation, to destroy what I'd spent years building. The email ended with, "I thought you should know this before trusting her with anything serious." I knew exactly who sent it. Or rather, who was behind it. My boss, a pragmatic man who could read between the lines, leaned back in his chair and, crossing his arms over his chest, said, "This is obviously nonsense, but I have to ask, do you know who might be behind this?" I swallowed hard. Yes, I knew. That same night, when the city was falling asleep to the sound of rain, my phone lit up with another message from Kiera. "You thought you were untouchable? Watch your back. Bye." That was it. It was crystal clear. This was not the impulsive act of one offended husband. It was a conspiracy. They were going to destroy me. First they tried to take my money. Now they wanted to take my career, the one thing I had truly built myself, without anyone's help, without asking, without begging, without lying. They thought they could break me, but they hadn't counted on one thing: I was already about to act. I dialed the lawyer, a woman with a sharp mind and a voice that rang with steel. I explained everything: the financial pressure, the psychological abuse, the slander attempts. She listened attentively, without interrupting, taking notes, and then said something that made me feel real relief for the first time in days. They've already screwed up. Let's make them pay for it. And so began the real revenge, not emotional, not hot-tempered, not theatrical, but carefully calibrated, documented, legally justified. Gaston and his family thought they had me cornered, that a few well-thought-out lies, a little blackmail, pressure and insults would unbalance me and make me come back. They were so sure I would break. But they didn't know that I was already 10 steps ahead. While they sat and plotted, I set my traps. In the morning, after consulting with my lawyer, official cease and desist letters were drawn up, each letter legally binding, with a full list of accusations and demands to stop all actions that defame my reputation. Gaston got his. Wanda got hers. Leopoldo. Kiera. Even her husband and cousin, who intervened in the situation by posting on Facebook with false allegations, were not left unattended. The subpoenas were delivered. I imagined their faces when they opened the mail envelopes: surprise, anger, panic. And indeed, panic was not long in coming. A few minutes after the delivery, Gaston called me. His voice was broken on the phone. He was shouting, "What the hell is this? Are you suing us?" I answered calmly, without a trace of emotion, "I am giving you an opportunity to stop. Stop lying, and it will not go any further." His voice became furious. "You wouldn't dare." I grinned. "Try it." That same evening, when I was almost asleep, I received a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice, tense, with false concern, said, "I just thought you should know. Your husband is cheating on you." I almost laughed. "Nice try, Kiera," I answered, and in response there was a short beep of a dropped call. Less than 2 hours later, I received an email from an anonymous account with a subject line that sounded almost like something out of a slapstick drama: "The secret life of your husband." Inside were screenshots of messages purported to be between Gaston and a woman, but they were so badly doctored that one even misspelled his name, Gaston. I immediately forwarded the materials to my lawyer. She studied them, shook her head, and commented with almost professional disappointment, "They're sloppy. But they're great for our case." The next morning, we filed for a formal restraining order against Gaston's entire family, covering all forms of defamation, harassment, and interference with my professional and personal life. "Now it's about to get real," she said, signing the documents with the satisfaction of having just completed a complex equation. 2 days later, Gaston showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door with such fury, as if he had a right not only to an explanation but also to forgiveness, as if all his actions were not a betrayal but merely a misunderstanding that I was obliged to listen to and understand. "Open the door," he shouted so loudly that I felt the glass frame with the photograph we had once taken in Sardinia slide off the shelf in the hallway. I didn't move. My fingers slid confidently over the phone. I had memorized this number by heart in the last few days. I had already spoken to the police on the phone, calmly, clearly, without trembling, like a person tired of being afraid. They arrived exactly 5 minutes later, and by the time Gaston was led away by the arms, he was still screaming, his voice breaking, as if there was a last hope in that scream. "Do you think it's over? Do you think you can destroy me?" He yelled, and I couldn't help but notice how absurd it sounded coming from the man who had started the destruction. As they were putting him in the patrol car, one of the officers, a tall, tired-faced man with bags under his eyes, muttered, as if to himself, "You're lucky we got here before he did anything." I frowned. "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling the icy fear slowly rise from my stomach to my throat. The officer glanced back at the car, looked at me almost sympathetically. "We found a tracking device under your car. Someone was watching you." The next morning, my lawyer called earlier than usual. Her voice, usually confident and businesslike, was especially even today. "Do you know why Gaston was so sure he could destroy you?" she asked. I swallowed. "Tell me." She sighed. "Because your name is still tied to one of his debts, and if he defaults, you could be held responsible." My heart sank. He wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation. He was trying to bury me financially, to drag me into a hole that would take years to climb out of. But unfortunately for him, he didn't know that I had one last move left, and when I made it, they would all regret ever coming for me. Gaston and his family thought they were winning. First they tried to take my money. Then they tried to destroy my reputation. Then they tried to control my movements. But not for a second did they realize that they were only hastening their own downfall. Because while they were busy scheming, I had already set in motion the mechanism that was supposed to end this once and for all. After the police found the tracker, I knew that sitting and waiting was no longer an option. So I hired a private investigator. I needed dirt. Real dirt. Dirt that would show the world who they really were. And what he found blew everything away. 2 weeks later, I sat in my lawyer's office, staring at the file in front of me. Its weight seemed disproportionate to the paper. It seemed to pulse, like a time bomb. Inside were bank records, hidden debts, fictitious accounts, fraudulent transactions, evidence of tax evasion, credit fraud, money laundering, all tied together by one name. Gaston and his family weren't just draining me of resources. They were part of a financial scheme in which I was merely a means. The biggest shocker was that Gaston had taken out a secret loan in my name, forging documents, using an old address and the passport number I had once naively given him. My blood ran cold. "Can we prove it?" I asked, my voice eerily calm, level as before a storm. My lawyer nodded. "We can do more than that. We can put them away." I didn't confront Gaston right away. I waited. I wanted them all in one place, so that no one could escape, so that everything I said would ring out loud, in unison with their collective guilt. I waited for Wanda's invitation. She was throwing a family dinner, another farce under the guise of reconnecting. I knew they were planning one last ambush, that they were probably preparing another attempt to scare me. So I played along. I showed up. Calm. Collected. Smiling. Everyone was in the room: Gaston, Kiera, their parents, even their uncle, who usually kept quiet but now looked at me like I was prey. They thought they had the upper hand again. They had no idea what was coming next. Wanda spoke up first, her smile too wide, her voice sickeningly sweet. "We're so glad you came, dear. We wanted to talk about, I know about the loan," I interrupted. The room froze. The silence was so thick I could hear my heart pounding. Gaston's face went white as paper. I looked straight at him. "I know you stole my identity to get that loan," I continued, taking out a folder and throwing it on the table for everyone to see. "And I know you participated in the fraud," I added, looking at him with icy calm. Gaston stammered, "I what?" No. No, you don't understand." I smiled. "I understand perfectly." And then I dropped the next bomb. "I also know about the tax fraud." Wanda's fork clattered onto her plate. I looked back at her. "You've been lying on your returns for years, moving money through dummy accounts, hiding assets. Do you really think the IRS won't be interested?" Leopoldo flushed as if he was suffocating. He growled, stood up, and looked at me, saying through his teeth, "You're little. Do you think you're so smart? You don't know what you're talking about." I tilted my head to the side, holding his gaze without blinking. I smiled, reservedly, almost sympathetically, as if these were not predators ready to tear me apart, but cornered animals unaware that their own traps had worked against them. "Oh, but I know," I said, leaning forward a little, "and so do the authorities." There was a moment of silence, and then the room literally exploded. Wanda began screaming hysterically at Leopoldo, who turned to Gaston, his face full of fury and fear, and barked, "What have you done?" Gaston, out of control, as if breaking through the shell of lies, screamed, "It wasn't just me. It was all of us. Mom, Dad, Kiera, you all knew." Kiera, turning pale, recoiled. "You're an idiot," she hissed. "You're going to arrest us." Wanda burst into tears, her shoulders shaking, sobbing, almost pleading, "How could you do this to us? We are your family." I stood up. You wanted to take everything from me, I said, looking them in the eye. Now you can lose it all yourself. That morning, my lawyer filed formal charges: fraud, identity theft, economic crimes. I also called the tax office. Within weeks, the accounts were frozen, the property seized, the comfortable life erased like a recording on a damaged tape. Gaston, broken, showed up in my office again one day, tearful, humiliated, pleading, "Please, they will send me to prison." I met his gaze. "You should have thought of this before you betrayed me," I replied, and left. He had lost everything: his job, his home, his name, his prospects. His parents were deep in debt. Kiera was separately charged with fraud. And me? I got everything I deserved. My career took off, my freedom returned. They tried to destroy me, but they only destroyed themselves. And I left, bringing only strength with me. Without a single scratch. Write a comment what you think about this story, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.